Tonight we're starting something new. It's called Corner Table, and it is a theater review segment featuring legendary critic John Simon and newcomer Justin Brown. Now, every other Friday, starting in February, John and Justin will discuss a play while sitting at a corner table in a theater district restaurant. John's been doing this sort of thing now for 50 years. He wrote for New York Magazine for more than 35 of them, and he's also been featured in the New York Times, Washington Post, and so many other places. Justin, he's an actor and a director who's just getting started in the critic game. Now, I sat down with both of them just yesterday. Let's get right to it. We're going to be talking about 3 plays here that a lot of people have expectations of, and I'm curious your own. First off, John, let's start off with the present. You have Cate Blanchett, obviously. People know her from cinema, but she has some experience on the stage as well. What do you think?
Oh yeah, she's a very accomplished actress in all media. Stage, screen, television, you name it. Of course, she is bigger in Australia than she is here, but she's pretty big here.
So what's the premise of the play?
Oh, that's a good question. It's an, it's an adaptation of an unfinished play by Chekhov, Platonov, which was it was the first thing he ever wrote for the theater, or meant for the theater, and it was 5 hours long, and then he got disgusted and dropped it. And then people have been cutting it and arranging it and updating it, and there's been a 4-hour version that has played in some places quite successfully. But even 4 hours is long. So this version, I guess, is shorter than that. And it's by Blanchett's husband, who almost always does things for her. Good husband that he is. But maybe not quite as good a playwright.
It's tough sometimes translating the Russian thought to the English spoken word, and to crunch something down to a congestible time for an American audience. Things get lost in translation potentially,
yeah,
right?
I mean, as someone who is multilingual, and you are as well, it's definitely difficult to break something down with as dense a language, especially as Russian. But Cate Blanchett said herself in an interview, she said, please don't look at this as just like a Chekhov translation. This feels so different. Because not only is it an adaptation, it's also dropped into post-perestroika. So it's the 1990s as opposed to towards the end of the 19th century, going into the 20th century, which completely changes the feel of the world that they're working in, which makes it a very exciting, different feel for the piece.
Is the unfortunate reality, the reality, however you want to frame it, that if it's not an adaptation of a TV show, an old movie, or a Disney, you better have a name that people recognize, usually from a medium outside of the stage, if you're going to sell this to the masses and for it to have legs. Is that just a reality, frankly, that to get the people, unlike some supernova like Hamilton, you better have something that people will say, well, I'll take a shot because I know Cate Blanchett?
Well, yes, they don't know her as well as they know Hamilton.
Yes.
Nobody knows anything as well as they know Hamilton.
Hey, yo, I'm just like my country. I'm young, scrappy, and hungry, and I'm not throwing away my shot.
But she is famous enough, and I think her name should carry us. Plus the fact that it should be made clear that the basic material is Chekhov. Even if it's immature Chekhov, even if it's unproduced Chekhov, even if it's over a long Chekhov, it's still Chekhov. Although not nearly as good as what he did later.
Now, revivals don't always have to be, you know, a TV show or whatever else. Sunset Boulevard and Glenn Close. Again, we've seen this before, obviously. It's a known commodity for a lot of people. What should we expect out of this version?
Well, out of this version, we're looking at Glenn Close revisiting this role 22 years later. She, in her rehearsal process, was saying that she refused to do a recreation, that she wanted to do something entirely fresh and new that speaks to Sunset Boulevard and Norma Desmond in 2016 and who she is today, which is why I think it'll be exciting to see this specific revival versus the original 1993 production, because I'm not a fan of seeing people continually come back to the same part. Do I think that it's like fun? I just feel like it's a little bit of a gimmick. But I think that with as renowned of an actress as Glenn Close is, it'll always be a pleasure to see her on stage. However, I think she has a lot of competition this season. So it'll be incredibly interesting to see how she refreshes something that people are already so incredibly familiar with.
Well, the thing is, she has now aged into the part. She was essentially too young for it. But of course, she faked it. And now she doesn't have to fake it anymore. She is old enough to be Norma Desmond, the real Norma Desmond. And I think she will be good at it, except that my feeling about her is that she's not that much of a singer. She is an actress. She's a good actress, although I don't particularly love her, but the hell with that. But she's good, but she's not that much of a singer. I've seen that part played now by her, by Patti LuPone, and by Betty Buckley. And I'm not sure which one of them is my favorite, but I wouldn't say that Glenn Close is overwhelmingly the best one for it. Those two women were good too.
August Wilson's a name obviously very familiar to both of you, but becoming more familiar to the general audience. Obviously, Fences, major motion picture now. Denzel Washington, who was on the stage before, will now obviously reprise the role on film. In fact, it'll be one of 5 films that he'll be involved with of August Wilson masterpieces. To that end, Jitney not as well known. Tell the audience a little bit, John, what the premise of it is, and then what we should expect from this adaptation.
Well, Jitney is basically about a rundown, disorganized, second-rate agency that hires out on various jobs. It hires out cars for various jobs. But it is also the story of all kinds of people who are involved in that agency. There's a father whose son has been in jail for many years for a passionate murder he committed, who now comes out of jail, and it's going to be a question of how does he re-enter society and what is his relationship to his father. And then there are other people in this agency who have other problems. One of them has problems with a woman. That's the one who's coming out of jail, as a matter of fact. So it's a kind of complicated, interactive group play. But I always felt that it should be on Broadway. I think of all of his plays, it merits perhaps most to be on Broadway. So naturally it wasn't. But now finally it is, and I'm very glad it's happening. It could be excellent.
Overall, are you looking forward to this coming year and what Broadway's got to offer? And if you could kind of give what you think will be thematic of it, how would you describe what you think 2017 holds on Broadway?
Well, I think it'll be fine. Every year has a few successes, but no year has more successes than a few. So you are hopeful. I mean, you couldn't be a critic if you weren't hopeful. Otherwise, you'd hang up your hat and go. So you're always hopeful that a year will be a good year. And some of the things that are coming are exciting. There's Hello, Dolly with Bette Midler, which could be very interesting. There are a number of things that look very promising. And it could be a banner year for all we know. And of course there is War Paint coming, which has 2 great actresses in a joint lead, sort of. And that could be very exciting too.
I think it's the year of women more than anything else. And the year of kind of Broadway returning to people who it has belonged to before. Because as John is saying, you have Patti LuPone, you have Christine Ebersole, you have Glenn Close, you have this, like, I mean, even looking at falsettos, because I would include that in the 2017 season, you have these incredible, prominent figures in theater.
You're going to help us, guys, breaking it all down as we get into the new year here, and we're going to take your lead on that. Gentlemen, thank you both very much. Enjoy the holidays.
Thank you.
Coming up next, if this kid was on Broadway, I bet she'd sell out. And the backstory, it is even more inspiring.